Mei Ling wore a faded floral dress, sitting in an extravagantly luxurious villa. Her mother, whom she hadn't seen in 20 years and now extravagantly dressed, held her hand and wept. Ling, you've lived a hard life in the countryside, but by marrying into the Hua family, you can enjoy wealth and honor. A pang went through Mei Ling's heart, and any extravagant hopes she had for maternal love vanished. She looked expressionlessly at Chen Lihua and said, I am your biological daughter. Are you sure you want me to marry in place of your stepdaughter, Lin Yanmei, to ward off misfortune? And that man has become a comatose vegetable from a car accident. The Su family wanted to grab the olive branch offered by the Hua family to ward off misfortune, but they didn't want Lin Yanmei to suffer by marrying into it. It turned out she was the sacrificial lamb, the one meant to be sacrificed from the beginning, and that's why Chen Lihua brought her back from the countryside. She had thought that it was Chen Lihua's conscience catching up with her, wanting to be a good mother. Chen Lihua cried pitifully, kneeling in front of her and saying, I had no choice. I am a remarried woman, a stepmother. It seems like I'm a rich lady, but I have had many hardships. I gave birth to you, so just help your mother out. Marry in place of your stepsister. Mei Ling took a deep breath, her eyes slightly red. Chen Lihua had abandoned her when she was just a baby to marry into the Su family as a stepmother. She doted on her stepdaughter Lin Yanmei as if she were the apple of her eye, and had ignored her own daughter in the countryside for 20 years. She thought Chen Lihua had brought her back out of a guilty conscience, remembering her abandoned daughter, but it turned out she was just squeezing out her last value. Fine, I'll marry. Consider it as repaying the debt of birth. Chen Lihua's tears turned to laughter, hurriedly drying her eyes and pulling her up. The Hua family has prepared a phoenix crown and bridal attire, all in red festivity. Quickly change into them. All she cared about was achieving her goal, bustling with excitement. Mei Ling shook off her hand, her radiant face filled with coldness. This is the last time. After this, I have nothing to do with you. Chen Lihua froze for a moment, then quickly acted as if nothing had happened and instructed the maids to help Mei Ling into her wedding dress. Mei Ling stood still as a puppet while they fitted her with those clothes, her already decent looks now even more stunning and lustrous. Her gaze flickered to the staircase, where a graceful figure appeared. Her stepsister, Lin Yanmei, was standing there with a smug smile at the corners of her mouth, silently saying, Poor thing without a mother. Mei Ling's hands hung by her side, tightly clutching the medical kit she had brought from the countryside. The maid reminded, Madam, the Hua family's car is already at the door. Chen Lihua repeatedly said, Ling, don't let the Hua family wait too long. You might as well leave this junk here, lest you become a laughingstock. She pushed and shoved Mei Ling towards the outside, trying to snatch the medical kit from her hands. Mei Ling dodged, causing Chen Lihua to lose her balance and nearly fall. This is my personal belonging. You have no right to handle it, Mei Ling said coldly, her eyes full of distance. The medical kit was her lifeline. She relied on it to heal and save people. Behind her, Lin Yanmei helped Chen Lihua up and said contemptuously, Stepmom, it seems like Mei Ling is reluctant. Having your biological daughter take her place in marriage, wouldn't that be unfair to her? Chen Lihua said fawningly, This is her good fortune. Even the vegetative second young master of the Hua family is out of her league. She could never live such a good life in the countryside. Mei Ling's hopes were thoroughly crushed. Bang! She closed the car door, shutting out their disgusting voices. The car drove all the way to the Hua family's estate as dusk fell. The Hua family was among the top tycoons of Haicheng, and the Su family was also fortunate to have secured this marriage connection. The legitimate line of the Hua family was divided between the main and the second branches. Tang Jicheng, the second young master of the Hua family, was exceptionally capable and the most powerful contender to be the family head. However, a month ago, he had a car accident and had been in a coma ever since, essentially given a death sentence by the hospital. The most sought-after young talent in Haicheng had suddenly turned into someone that all the ladies wanted to avoid as much as possible. It was said that he had even lost the ability to have children. How pitiful. The second branch of the Hua family had no other choice but to believe the superstition about warding off ill luck. Mei Ling's vision was obscured by the red bridal veil as Aunt Hua, a servant of the Hua family, supported her into the villa, with the phoenix crown on her head so heavy she could barely lift her head. She was led into a spacious bedroom and sat down by the bed. Aunt Hua used a red cord 1/2 meter long to bind her right hand in loops, tying the other end to the left hand of the man on the bed. You mustn't untie it. It's the rule, Aunt Hua cautioned. If you ruin this, you won't be able to bear the consequences. Mei Ling nodded slightly, her neck so stiff and swollen it was almost impossible to straighten. Seeing her compliance, Aunt Hua added, You'll have to endure the night with the young master. Call me if you need anything. After saying this, she closed the door and left. The vast room was terrifyingly quiet, with only the beep-beep sounds from the machines and the faint breathing of the unfamiliar man. Mei Ling gently placed the medicine box at her feet, the faint scent of medicinal herbs offering her a little reassurance. As long as she had the medicine box, relying on her expertise in acupuncture, she felt confident. Her whole body was stiff and sore from sitting, so she subconsciously bent her pale, lotus root-like fingers to massage her neck, forgetting about the red cord in her hand. She was yanked hard. The beads on the phoenix crown clinked crisply as she fell onto the bed, and the red bridal veil flew off. Her entire body was pressed against a warm one, her red lips brushing against the man's cheek. The man lying beneath her had a pale complexion, his eyes closed tightly, and long curled eyelashes casting shadows, giving him a stunningly handsome appearance that dazzled onlookers. However, the bright red lipstick mark on his cheek marred his aloof demeanor. Her cheeks flushed, she abruptly got up, frantically trying to rub the lipstick mark off his handsome face. But her hair was hopelessly entangled in the buttons of the man's pajamas, and she couldn't untangle it. Ah! Mei Ling let out a cry of pain, her scalp burning, as her eyes began to well up with moisture. The more she struggled, the tighter it got. Her red lips kept brushing against the man's thin lips, again and again. If anyone from the Hua family saw this scene, they would surely think she was audacious to the extreme, not even sparing a man in a vegetative state. I'm sorry, I have no other choice, Mei Ling said in a soft voice, looking at the man with his eyes tightly closed. She spread her legs and, despite the pain, mounted the man, grabbing at the collar of his pajamas. With a ripping sound, the cotton pajamas tore open and buttons fell off. Phew! At last it came loose. Mei Ling looked down. The man lying on the sickbed slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were deep, exuding endless coldness as he looked at her. The torn pajama top exposed his sexy Adam's apple and broad chest. He looked as though he had been ravaged. Mei Ling was so frightened that she froze, clenching her legs tight on top of him. The man let out a muffled groan. The atmosphere was frigid. Mei Ling covered her heart, which was pounding wildly, and shuffled her buttocks before tentatively asking, You're awake? The man had his eyes open for a long time, but made no movements or sounds. Mei Ling tentatively reached out to cover his eyes with her hand, feeling a slight itch in her palm. Tang Jicheng slowly closed his eyes. She turned over and sat on the edge of the bed, sweating coldly. Eventually, she pinched the sleeve of her garment and wiped all the lipstick marks off Tang Jicheng's face. Then, feeling guilty like a thief, she covered his entire body with the blanket. He still did not wake up. Only then did Mei Ling comfort herself. Perhaps it was just an illusion. The voice from before must have been an auditory hallucination because she was too tired. She sat by the bed for a long time, and the night grew deep. In the latter half of the night, she yawned while covering her mouth and unknowingly drifted off to sleep. In the middle of the night, she dreamt again of that chaotic scene from many years past. Mei Ling turned over in her sleep, missing the moment the man's eyes opened once more. Dawn broke. Mei Ling was awakened by a commotion, and she opened her bleary-eyed. Aunt Hua stood by the bed with a wash basin. Young madam, please wash and cleanse the young master. Me? Wash him? Of course. Who did it before? Tang Jicheng had been in a coma for a month. It was the caregiver, but how could an outsider compare to one's own wife? Her tone was certain, leaving no room for discussion. Wearing the big red wedding dress, Mei Ling, with pursed lips and a sense of helplessness, took the towel from Aunt Hua, wrung out the water, and gently wiped the handsome face of the man. He kept his eyes tightly shut. His eyelashes did not move. Last night had indeed been an illusion. Mei Ling couldn't ignore his handsome features, and her cheeks flushed red. Aunt Hua supervised as she wiped over the man's eyebrows, eyes, lips, neck, and chest. Inch by inch, the towel brushed over the skin, and her fingertips followed closely. The young master likes cleanliness. Please make sure to wipe thoroughly. After wiping, you must massage the whole body to effectively prevent muscle atrophy. Caring for our young master must be meticulous. Aunt Hua's eyes were sharp, leaving Mei Ling no room to cut corners. She could only comfort herself by thinking of Tang Jicheng as one of the patients she had treated before. With this thought, her movements became even more careful and professional. Aunt Hua watched and nodded silently. Mei Ling held his wrist and unfolded his fingers with the towel, wiping them one by one. Tang Jicheng's fingers were fair and slender, with distinct joints, quite beautiful. The pulse she felt as she pressed her fingertips was strong and throbbing. Mei Ling made a noise of confusion. "What's wrong?" Aunt Hua asked. Mei Ling shook her head, and Aunt Hua looked at her calmly and said, "You and the young master are already a married couple. I've been through it myself. Be more open." She wrung another towel and handed it to Mei Ling. "There's still the bottom part to wipe." "Which bottom?" The blush on Mei Ling's cheeks spread like wildfire. "He's a patient. He's just a patient." Grandpa Zhang once said, "Great doctors heal the sick, calm the spirit, and maintain a desireless state." She must strive to focus solely on the task, treating every patient as if they were stones or wood. Mei Ling took a deep breath and exhaled the hot air. She gripped the towel and tentatively reached into the sheet, moving down along the man's abdomen, feeling the contours of his muscles even through the thin towel. Her mind muddled, she thought. This man's looks and physique were truly blessed by heaven, perfect for practicing acupuncture on. Suddenly, her wrist was grasped by a cool yet warm hand. In her ear, a fine, resolute male voice, tinged with slight annoyance, said, no need, to wipe the lower part." Clang! Aunt Hua's wash basin fell to the ground, and after a moment of shock she screamed and ran out of the room. "Madam, the young master has awakened!" Tang Jicheng had woken up. Mei Ling's heartbeat sped up as she stood up and turned to look at the man on the bed. Those obsidian-like eyes were mixed with coldness and embarrassment, staring straight at her. Mei Ling, holding a towel, lowered her voice. I was following Aunt Hua's instruction to wipe your body." "Last night." Tang Jicheng's voice was husky, his gaze cold, and with a tone of accusation, he spoke deliberately. "You stole kisses from me, many times." Mei Ling stiffened, truly wishing she could find a block of tofu to smash her head against. Chaotic footsteps echoed through the corridor, and the villa was thrown into disorder. The bedroom soon filled with white coats, and all unrelated individuals were squeezed out of the room. Mei Ling slowly exhaled a breath of relief and stood in the corner, eyeing the closed bedroom door, feeling more relaxed. She was finally spared from facing Tang Jicheng alone. "The madam has arrived." "Madam." The crowd in the corridor parted, and a woman, dressed in a simple and elegant cheongsam, exuding a refined air, walked over and looked at her. This was Tang Jicheng's biological mother, the Hua family's second madam, Gu Qin. Subconsciously, Mei Ling stiffened her back, feeling a bit nervous. "You did well." The second madam of the Hua family held her hand, repeatedly saying, "It's all thanks to you that Xingzhou could wake up." She hadn't expected the desperate remedy to actually work. She slipped off a luxurious emerald green jade bracelet from her wrist and put it onto Mei Ling's hand. "Madam, this is too valuable." "Good child, don't refuse." Gu Qin patted the back of her hand and said, "This is my gift to the daughter-in-law, I accept." Mei Ling pressed her dry lips together, managing a faint smile. "Madam Hua, I am not from the Su family." "I know. Lin Yi brought over a stepdaughter, seeing our second branch in decline. But even a dying camel is bigger than a horse. Xingzhou still holds a major project, and we'll have our comeback." She paused, then continued. "Anyway, from today onwards, you're the only daughter-in-law I, Gu Qin, acknowledge." The second madam of the Hua family looked at her beautiful face and felt increasingly pleased with her. "Our Xingzhou will rely on you to take care of him. You're a person with good fortune. Also, bring some of that to my son. From now on, just call me Mom." He also has a sister who went to the temple to pray for safety and blessings, and his dad is busy cleaning up a mess. Another day, our family should have a good meal together. Mei Ling looked at the sincerity in her eyes becoming a little moist. Not all mothers in the world were selfish. The country folk always said she was a jinx, the bringer of bad luck, a lone, evil star. Her own father had died because of her influence, and her mother had run off with a wealthy man. It was the first time anyone had said she was fortunate. Squeak! The master bedroom door suddenly opened. The leading doctor took off his stethoscope and mask, saying, "The young master's physical functions are gradually recovering, and brain and nerve functions have not been damaged. However, there are multiple spots of bruising in the bone marrow of his legs, and he has no sensation. The surgical risk is very high." "So he can't be treated?" Unwilling to believe it, Gu Qin pressed. "Yes, The young master's legs are disabled, which will affect his fertility, the doctor said harshly. I am sorry. Unless, he pushed his glasses up, unless you find the national medical expert, Master Zhang Rue. He has had successful cases, but he retired to care for his health, and for many years, no one has known his whereabouts, so the hope is slim. Having heard the doctor, Madame Huo's face drooped with defeat. Who in the world could find the national doctor Zhang Rue now? A flicker of confusion passed through Mei Ling's eyes, but Tang Jicheng's legs were clearly... As she hesitated over whether to speak, the phone in her inner pocket started to vibrate. In a corner of the staircase. Seeing the name flashing on the screen, Mei Ling answered, suppressing her aversion. Hello? Ling. Chen Lihua gently probed on the other end of the line. I heard Hua's second young master has woken up? Are his legs truly ruined? The doctors had just issued a diagnosis, and the Su family was already privy to internal information. Chen Lihua did not express concern about how the Hua family would deal with a surrogate daughter-in-law, nor did she ask about how she spent the previous night, but instead sought to pry into insider details. Mei Ling's heart grew even colder. She said indifferently, If there's nothing else, I'm going to hang up. Wait! Chen Lihua called out anxiously. You must help your sister. Tang Jicheng has a major project in his hands, a collaboration between Tian Yuan Group and the Hua Corporation. If you can convince him to sign the project transfer document, your sister will be able to marry the elder Hua heir, and you can be sisters-in-law. Mei Ling laughed in scorn. What makes you think I can do this favor? I'm just a bride brought in to avert disaster, with no status whatsoever. Chen Lihua coaxed her patiently. Since you married in, Tang Jicheng has woken up. The second branch of the Hua family is counting on you now. Besides, he's already a cripple. What use does he have holding on to the project? It's better to hand it over and ensure your sister's marriage to the Hua elder heir. Greed flickered in Chen Lihua's eyes. That project could reap profits in the billions upon completion. And it was through that very project that Tang Jicheng had secured his position in the Hua Corporation. I can't help you. With that, Mei Ling was about to hang up the phone. Chen Lihua's voice turned shrill as she shouted, That rural old hag has been taken to the Su family. If you don't agree, you may never see her again in your lifetime. Have you no heart? Mei Ling roared. She's my grandmother, your mother-in-law as well. All these years, if it hadn't been for her grandmother raising her, she would have died a long time ago. Her grandmother eked out a meager existence, scrimping and saving for her schooling, working herself to illness. No matter how hard she tried to learn medicine from the neighbor, old man Zhang, she couldn't save her grandmother's worn-out, failing body. Chen Lihua actually made her travel a long distance. Who knew what hardships and indignities that old lady had to suffer? Your father died early, and I have no blood relation to that old hag, Chen Lihua said callously. Clutching her phone, Mei Ling's knuckles turned white, and her fingers trembled. Biting her lip and holding back tears, she reddened her eyes and asked, Am I still your biological daughter? Chen Lihua was silent for a while, then answered with cold indifference. Wei Wei is the one I raised with my own hands. She comes from a good background, has charm and talent. You managed to marry the Hua second heir. She should obviously marry someone even better than you. I don't care whether you steal or rob, you must do it. On the day you return to your parents' home for the visit, I expect good news. Otherwise, considering the old woman's age, anything can happen. Chen Lihua hung up the phone directly. A chill rose from Mei Ling's feet and crept up her spine. The air she breathed felt like knives scraping her throat and lungs, piercingly painful. After a while, there was a sound at the top of the stairs. Young madam, what are you hiding here for? Aunt Hua had searched for her for a long time, pulling her toward the master bedroom. The young master woke up and has been asking for you. Mei Ling pocketed her worries and followed Aunt Hua into the room. Tang Jicheng's mother greeted her warmly, pulling her beside the bed and said to the stern man lying there, This is Mei Ling, your wife. You were married to her while you were in a coma. Mei Ling met the icy gaze of Tang Jicheng, feeling awkward and ashamed, and lowered her head. He must think of her as a despicable woman, more beastly than a beast. There was a storm brewing in the man's eyes, like a ferocious wind sweeping over a desert, his brow furrowed, exuding coldness. Divorce, he commanded, with an edge in his voice. Mei Ling looked at him, astonished. No! Gu Qin raised her voice in objection, indignantly claiming, Mei Ling is your life. What if you die after divorcing? Are you still thinking about that little slut? Mother, His voice was slow and hoarse, as he was just recovering from a serious illness and full of resignation. Now that I'm awake and a cripple, having lost my inheritance rights, why should I delay others? Tears welled in the eyes of Tang Jicheng's mother as she sobbed. It will get better, just as long as we can find that elderly gentleman. You still have resources at your disposal to make a comeback. Everything will turn out okay. Did you ever ask this young lady if she was willing to be widowed alive? As Tang Jicheng spoke, he was looking directly at Mei Ling, a different meaning hidden in his eyes. Mei Ling felt as though ants were crawling all over her body, awkwardly reminded of last night's embarrassing interaction. Did he think she was such a dissatisfied person? Mrs. Hua felt a bit guilty, looking at Mei Ling, who was full of turmoil. Mei Ling, are you willing to stay with Xingzhou? Although our branch of the Hua family has lost power, I still have a sizable dowry, which should be enough for our expenses, she pleaded with Mei Ling. Mei Ling's lips were tightly pursed, her fingernails digging deeply into her skin. Chen Lihua was using her grandmother to threaten Tang Jicheng for the major project he held, but it seemed that those things were the only chance for the second branch of the Hua family to turn the tables. Should she take away the hope of Hua family's second branch? But what about her grandmother? Her silence, in the eyes of the mother and son, was a sign of unwillingness. The man lying in the bed had a distant look in his eyes and a proud air about him, as if he had come to a conclusion. We'll proceed with the divorce tomorrow. Mei Ling suddenly came to her senses, her soft voice sounding out. I won't divorce! In the face of Tang Jicheng's terrifying gaze, she mustered her courage and said, I'm already married to you. I am willing to be widowed alive. Mrs. Huo heaved a sigh of relief and, with tears turning into laughter, said, Good child. I knew you were different from those other women. Aunt Hua, let's go. We shouldn't disturb the young couple from nurturing their affection. Ah, Aunt Hua responded with a sound, giving Mei Ling an heroic look. The two left, closing the door behind them. Mei Ling stood by the bed, her head down, fiddling with her fingers, licking her dry lips. The man's sharp gaze was fixed on her. After a long while, he said distantly, Miss Chow, I can give you money. Her dowry is all tied up in the stock market. She's deceiving you. Mei Ling bit her cheek, explaining, I'm not after money. Tang Jicheng saw flashes of last night's scenes before his eyes, his chest heaving slightly as he said stiflingly, Awake, I would never indulge you to treat me as you did last night. Being widowed alive means you can't touch even a finger of mine, not even... His expression grew colder. Not even for satisfying a craving. Mei Ling's face turned so red it could bleed. Was hugging and kissing what he meant by satisfying a craving? I didn't, she murmured softly. And besides, you were not capable anyway. What did you say? The man asked. Mei Ling shook her head and let go of her tightly clasped hands, making a decision. Her eyes were as clear as water, her voice firm. Mr. Hua, I am confident that I can heal your legs. Huh, the man scoffed. From a proud scion to a cripple, he was full of irritation and defeat. The woman in front of him was humiliating and mocking him over and over again. Even with Tang Jicheng's usual good manners, he had lost the last of his patience. Get out! Mei Ling's innocent face was full of defiance. I'm not lying. Do you have a medical license? Have you ever cured anyone? What proof do you have? Mei Ling shook her head. No, but I have treated many people in the countryside. When I touched you, I felt your pulse. It's... Get out! With a frown, Mei Ling got a bit angry facing his resistance. She stepped forward, swiftly pulling off Tang Jicheng's covers, and stripped down his sleep pants. His muscular legs, clearly defined, were now exposed to the air. The man was furious. Mei Ling! I'll prove it to you right now. Mei Ling dragged out the medicine box from under the bed and opened it. 9 silver needles, emitting a cold sheen, were lined up neatly. She took out a long needle and swiftly, accurately, and fiercely pierced an acupuncture point in Tang Jicheng's leg. She tilted her head, focusing intently on Tang Jicheng as she asked, Do you feel anything? The needle awakened his numb legs, spreading a tingling sensation like ants nibbling at his skin. Tang Jicheng watched her earnest face, a shadow flickering in his eyes. His index finger grazed his fingertip, turning his head away with an indifferent expression, his brows furrowed tightly. Mei Ling could tell he was in pain. She twisted the tail of the needle further in by a fraction and softly said, Feeling it is good. I may not have treated any celebrities, nor do I have a medical license, but I am sure I can cure your legs. As long as you have acupuncture daily to drain the hematoma, along with medicinal decoction and massage, you could stand again in as little as 1 month, or at most, half a year. Tang Jicheng felt something stir in his heart, and the hostility faded from his restrained, handsome face. What do you want? There was no such thing as free charity. He was a businessman. Mei Ling paused, feeling a bit embarrassed. My grandmother was taken to Haicheng by the Su family. They want the major project that you have with Tianyuan Group. Let Lin Yanmei marry your cousin. Even she, a country girl, had heard of Tianyuan Group. That was a multinational corporation, and while the Hua family dominated Haicheng alone, they couldn't compare to the enormity of Tianyuan Group. That project was highly coveted. Mei Ling looked at him uneasily. She felt guilty, thinking Tang Jicheng was unlucky. Not only would he lose resources, but he also had to hand over his fiancée to someone else. Tang Jicheng let out a sarcastic laugh. Seeing his reaction, Mei Ling said with disappointment, "Sorry, I was overstepping." She bent over to remove the needles, tidied up the medicine box, and left the room. As Tang Jicheng watched her dispirited figure leaving, a dark light passed through his eyes. He reached for the mobile phone on the bedside table and dialed a number. "Wang Lei, it's me." The man on the other end sounded as if he had seen a ghost. "Tang Jicheng, you're really awake? I thought I'd have to visit your grave next year." Tang Jicheng spoke concisely. "Prepare a brief for me on the partnership data between Tianyuan Group and the Hua family, and make some alterations to it." "Okay," Wang Lei said earnestly. "Just a heads up, the car accident wasn't simple, but there's no trace and I can't find any evidence." Tang Jicheng's expression was cool. "No need to look any further. I know who it is." "Can't be your cousin and his family, can it?" Wang Lei cursed angrily. "That bastard has no ability, just schemes. You're not giving the brief to him, are you? In that case, I'll have to be extra thorough." Tang Jicheng cut him off. "Don't worry about that. Help me look into someone else." "Who?" "Mei Ling." "Oh, your wife," Wang Lei responded promptly. Tang Jicheng didn't refute his term, saying, "Check her background for any ties with the main family." After hearing that, Wang Lei breathed heavily. "You mean she's sent by the main family? Aren't you in danger then? Do you need to find bodyguards for 24-hour protection?" Tang Jicheng hung up the phone squarely, cutting off Wang Lei's endless complaints. He half closed his eyes, his profile flickering in the light. His thoughts turned to his stubborn and radiant new wife as his long fingers traced the edge of the bed. How coincidental it was, his legs disabled, and the Sun family sent a substitute bride claiming she could cure his condition. That woman spun a web of lies, all to exchange for the project in his hands. He never believed in pie falling from the sky, especially when considering her appearance. In the living room, Mei Ling, wearing a bright red bridal dress, came downstairs. Mrs. Huo took her hand and said, "I've got a set of my daughter's clothes for you. Change into them quickly. I'm taking you shopping for some clothes and jewelry." "No need, Mrs. Huo wouldn't have her being polite, hurried her into the clothes, and had the driver take them to the bustling malls of Haicheng. Gu Qin entered the mall and began a shopping spree. "These and this piece. Wrap them all up for me. Mei Ling, you'll definitely look wonderful in them." "That's too extravagant, actually." Mei Ling remembered Tang Jicheng saying his mother's dowry had been tied up in the stock market, and she grew worried. The cheapest clothing here cost tens of thousands, and she couldn't even spend that much in the countryside in half a year. She couldn't even pay it back with her small savings. Young girls should dress vividly and brightly. A daughter-in-law is like half a daughter. Why should there be any courtesy between mother and daughter? A flicker passed through Mei Ling's eyes. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law duo swept through the clothing store and then entered a jewelry store. There were always those short-sighted people looking for trouble. "Oh, Mrs. Hua II. Still in the mood for shopping, I see? I heard your son has awakened. Congratulations indeed. It's a pity he's become disabled. The Hua family inheritance can only go to the first branch now." The lady covered her lips, delighting in the misfortune. Tang Jicheng had been excessively outstanding, eclipsing too many people. When he met with misfortune, everyone wanted to kick him while he was down. Gu Qin coldly retorted with a laugh. "Mrs. Soon, I heard your son ended up in the hospital fooling around with women. Don't let him die on top of one someday." "Oh my, such a scandal. What does it matter to me?" "You!" The lady was fuming. "What about me? Even with my son's legs disabled, he's still better than your son. I heard the Sun family has sought famous doctors far and wide to no avail for his infertility. Looks like the Sun family is facing extinction." Gu Qin's gaze was haughty. Her every word struck Mrs. Sun's sore spot. The Sun family's only son's ineptitude in bed was an open secret in Haicheng, and he had this penchant for taking medicine and stirring up trouble, frequently becoming the butt of jokes. Mrs. Sun wouldn't show weakness. "Isn't your son the same? We will find Master Zhang Rui sooner or later, and then don't come begging to me." "Beg you? Funny. My Xingzhou is blessed. Who knows if Master Zhang might come to treat him himself." When it came to power struggles among the elite, Mrs. Huo was yet unmatched in a war of words. "You, don't forget that our Sun family still holds the land rights. I'd like to see how Tang Jicheng settles the Hua's and Tian Yuan's project." Mrs. Sun's face alternated between green and white as she grabbed her bag and left. When she heard about the Tian Yuan group project, Mei Ling's eyes darkened with complexity. Gu Qin composed herself and turned to point at the top glass cabinet. "Show me that sapphire necklace." The sales associate put on white gloves and took down the jewelry box, praising, "You really have an eye for beauty." Mei Ling looked at the string of zeros on the price tag and felt dizzy. Before she could react, Gu Qin had already put it on her. The teardrop-shaped sapphire pendant made Mei Ling's skin look snow white, and the dazzling light cast a halo around her. "It suits you very well," Mrs. Huo admired with satisfaction. Mei Ling shook her head and said earnestly, biting her lip, "I should not refuse a gift from an elder, but you have already given me so many things. I cannot accept this necklace." "All right, you child." Mrs. Huo II looked at her regretfully and put the necklace back. Seizing the opportunity, Mei Ling voiced her questions. "Who exactly is that Master Zhang?" It seemed like all the wealthy people in Haicheng were looking for him. Walking arm in arm, Mrs. Huo II explained as they walked. "Zhang Rui, Master Zhang is a national doctor. His acupuncture is nothing short of miraculous, specializing in difficult and complicated ailments. Whatever the disease, it's assured to be cured upon his treatment. It's just that he retired at the age of 60, and no one knows where he is now, though it is said that he took a disciple. If they couldn't find the master himself, finding a disciple of Zhang Rui would be the next best thing. Wealthy people valued their health more, and who didn't have the occasional headache or fever? In matters of life and death, befriending a renowned doctor was vital security." Mei Ling nodded after listening. Her neighbor, Grandpa Zhang in the countryside, was also skilled in acupuncture, and she had learned the treatment for blocked leg meridians from him. For a moment, she entertained an absurd thought, but it was quickly dismissed by her. Grandpa Zhang's real name wasn't Zhang Rui. They were not the same person. How could a national doctor reside in the countryside? As long as we find Zhang Rui, Xingzhou's... Gu Qin had yet to finish speaking when her phone began to vibrate. She released Mei Ling's hand and answered the call. "Hello?" Whatever the person on the other end said, Mei Ling saw her expression change instantly, her complexion turning ashen. "Let that bastard wait. I'm coming back immediately." In the villa, Aunt Hua was crying so hard that heaven and earth seemed to blur. When Mei Ling and Gu Qin returned, wiping away tears, she said, "Madam, the eldest young master barged into the young master's room with the doctor and drew a large tube of blood." "Where is he?" "Still in the room." Clutching her chest, Gu Qin's footsteps were chaotic as she rushed towards the stairs. Her high heels twisted, injuring her ankle, and Mei Ling hurriedly supported her. "Thank you." Gu Qin's voice was tight with a choking sob. As they reached the entrance of the corridor, they saw the door to the master bedroom open. A young man with gold-rimmed glasses and sharp phoenix eyes stood there. His hair was meticulously styled, and he was dressed in expensive fashion. A smile playing on his lips, he looked towards them. His gaze swept past Mei Ling's face with a touch of chill. "Auntie, is this the country bumpkin from the countryside?" To think that Xingzhou, a child favored by the heavens, now only matches with a village woman. "Tang Jicheng, what exactly do you want to do?" Gu Qin coldly demanded. With a proud tone, Tang Jicheng answered, "I am acting on grandfather's orders, bringing a doctor to check Xingzhou's health. Has Auntie misunderstood something?" "The checkup is over, right? Please leave." "Auntie, please don't speak to me like that. Over these years, our main branch has been searching for Zhang Rui, the national doctor, for grandfather. The leads we hold are always more than what you and the second branch have. When the old master of the Hua family was young, he suffered a serious injury which caused him to endure unbearable pain in his limbs whenever winter came. Having sought famous doctors to no avail, he pinned his hopes on the national doctor, Zhang Rui." Seeing Gu Qin's displeased face, Tang Jicheng was satisfied and sneered with pride. "I'll take my leave then, Auntie." Flushed with triumph, Tang Jicheng's long-suppressed gloom was swept away, as he had been overshadowed by Tang Jicheng for many years. A lame man, how could he be fit to become the next heir of the Hua family? Gu Qin bit her lip as she watched them leave, every movement of her foot sending through a bone-piercing pain. "Let me see your injury." Mei Ling helped her sit down in the corridor, her slender and nimble fingers manipulating Gu Qin's ankle. "It's all right, the bone isn't damaged." Whatever she did, with just a few strong twists, Gu Qin was able to stand and walk again. With tears in her eyes, Gu Qin looked towards the tightly closed door, then turned her gaze to Mei Ling. Mei Ling, could I trouble you to take care of Xingzhou for me? My foot is fine. He's the one who is important." A mother knows her child best. After the commotion Tang Jicheng had made, it was uncertain what the scene inside the room was like. Being so proud, he surely wouldn't want his closest kin to see him in a state of humiliation. Mei Ling, shrewd as she was, instantly understood. She nodded solemnly. "I'll go in. Aunt Hua, please help Madam to rest." "All right." As they left, Mei Ling turned the doorknob and entered the room. Inside, everything was in disarray, and the floor was a mess. The man was leaning against the edge of the bed, his profile incomparably noble. His clothes were disheveled and stained with blood. Hearing movement, he slowly turned his head. That one glance was like the sharpest blade under heaven, sending a chill down Mei Ling's spine. "Mother-in-law sent me to tidy up." Mei Ling bent down to pick up the pillows, documents, and water cup from the floor, neatly arranging them. The man's deep voice resonated from behind. "Are you here to clean the room, or to take care of me?" There wasn't much to clean up when it was he who had intentionally smashed those things. If it weren't for this, how would Tang Jicheng believe he's mentally collapsed, utterly dejected? Mei Ling abruptly looked up, only to see him with an unconcerned expression, beckoning. "I need to change clothes." "All right." Mei Ling took a set of pure white cotton homeware from the wardrobe. Approaching Tang Jicheng, he had already naturally outstretched his hands. She unbuttoned and removed his shirt. The lithe, muscular body underneath was exposed before her, a cold white dazzling her eyes, and her heart pounded. She quickly dressed him in the top, holding the trousers in hand, deep in thought. "You were pretty impressive when you were taking off my pants, huh? What's with the act of innocence and shyness now?" His lips were pale, almost bloodless, and his words were cutting. Mei Ling was stunned for a moment. Then, gritting her teeth, she viciously pulled down his pants, inch by inch. So white, so firm. These long, powerful legs must be quite suited for farm work. Tang Jicheng leaned against the bed, his eyes tightly closed in a resigned, "If anything goes wrong, so be it," manner. The warm and soft fingertips occasionally brushed his skin, triggering a series of shudders. "Give me your hand." Mei Ling wrung out the towel and wiped the bloodstains on his arm. The puncture was conspicuous, the skin around it tinged with blue. They must have drawn so much blood on purpose. Tang Jicheng's dark gaze swept over her face. Then, with a sudden move, he grabbed her wrist with a jerk and pulled. With a forceful tug, Mei Ling tumbled into the vast bed. Before she could get up, he pressed his upper body onto her. His scorching breath licked her cheek as the deep, masculine voice rose. "What benefit did Tang Jicheng give you?" Mei Ling's chin was held by his hand, forced to tilt her neck and look up at him, moisture brimming in her clear, almond eyes. "I don't know him." So he didn't trust her. All the previous interactions had been just a game to him. It wasn't until now that this proud and steady noble son finally revealed his decisive and ruthless claws. His right hand glided over her tender waist, his fingertips sinking into the softness there. All she heard was his cold voice mixed with a barely visible roguishness. "Do you know what methods were used to interrogate female spies in the past?" She knew. She couldn't escape torture either way, being harshly tormented. Mei Ling writhed, trying to break free. "You've pulled down my pants twice. I pulled down yours once. That's not too much, right?" he said again, his fingers resting on the side of her leg. Mei Ling was so angry her eyes reddened, and she fiercely pinched the shoulder-well acupoint on his body. Tang Jicheng's arm tingled, and he released his grip. She took the opportunity to roll off the bed, holding up her pants and warily watching him. Anger, resentment. Even if you strip me bare, you still wouldn't be able to do it." Her voice was tearful and reckless, her cheeks still bearing the imprint of pressure. Mei Ling pushed open the door and ran out, overwhelmed with shame and anger, returning to her own room. The two women who had been hiding around the corner of the corridor then came out. Her clothes buttons are undone. Her hair is in disarray. Her face is flushed. Was she kissed by the young master? Aunt Hua gave a thumbs up and praised in a low voice. The madam's strategy is brilliant, having the young madam take care of the young master. Pretending to be hurt to win sympathy, isn't that how feelings are cultivated? Guqin glanced at her slantingly. Piece of cake. I know my son well. He won't suffer a big loss in front of Tang Jicheng unless it's intentional. When has Tang Jicheng ever really had the upper hand over him from childhood? The young master is clever, just like you. In the room, Tang Jicheng fiddled with the tips of his fingers, rubbing them together. Soft, like pinching a marshmallow. He looked down and thought, what does it mean that he wouldn't be able to do it? If he really had used his methods, would she have been able to turn over and run away? Buzz buzz. The cell phone on the bedside table vibrated a few times. Wang Lei was efficient. Mei Ling's life history from childhood to adulthood had been compiled into a detailed file and sent over. Tang Jicheng casually opened the investigative report. His fingers paused, a flash of astonished surprise in his eyes.